It was supposed to be a normal family hike, an attempt to reconnect and spend time outdoors. My husband Zeke, our 6-year-old daughter Agnes, and I drove to a mountain trail a couple of hours from our home. The weather was perfect, sunny with a cool breeze, and the forest stretched out before us, calm and green. But that sense of peace didn't last long. We had only been hiking for an hour when it happened. One moment, Agnes was running ahead, laughing and calling out about the birds she saw, and the next, she was gone. "Agnes!" I shouted, my voice echoing through the trees. I spun in circles, scanning the path, the trees, and the underbrush, hoping to catch a glimpse of her pink jacket. But there was no sign of her. Panic seized me. Zeke stood a few feet away, looking annoyed rather than concerned. "This is your fault," he snapped. "If you hadn't been so slow, you could have kept an eye on her." His words hit me like a slap. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Our daughter was missing, and all he could do was blame me. Before I could respond, he turned and began walking back toward the car. "What are you doing?" I shouted. "We have to find her." "You find her," he replied coldly, without turning back. "I'm done." And just like that, he left. I watched in disbelief as he walked away, got in the car, and drove off, leaving me alone in the middle of the forest. For a moment, I was frozen in place. My mind couldn't comprehend what was happening. My husband had just abandoned me, leaving me to find our daughter on my own. Fear and anger welled up inside me, but I couldn't waste any more time. Agnes was out there, lost and possibly in danger. I had to find her. I began running down the path, calling her name over and over. "Agnes! Agnes, where are you?" But my voice seemed to be swallowed by the thick trees. The further I went, the more hopeless it felt. There were no footprints, no sounds of a child playing or crying, just silence. My chest tightened, and I struggled to catch my breath. I had asthma, and the panic was making it worse. I stopped for a moment, leaning against a tree, gasping for air. This was a nightmare. My little girl was missing, and I had no idea where to even begin looking. I couldn't give up. Agnes needed me. I pressed on, deeper into the forest, my eyes scanning every shadow and movement. But the more I searched, the more my mind spiraled. What if she'd wandered off too far? What if she'd fallen? What if something worse had happened? The thoughts raced through my head, each more terrifying than the last. The sun was starting to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the forest floor. I'd been searching for what felt like hours, but there was still no sign of her. Every minute that passed without finding her made my heart pound harder in my chest. Then, out of nowhere, a thought struck me. Zeke. Where was he? He'd left me here, but why? It wasn't like him to be so uncaring, or at least it hadn't been. In the 8 years we'd been married, he'd never been the most attentive husband. But lately, he'd been distant, cold, like a different person entirely. And today, why had he even suggested this hike in the first place? He hated family outings. My legs were shaking, both from exhaustion and fear. I had to sit down, if only for a minute, to think. Something about today felt off, more than just the fact that Agnes was missing. Zeke's behavior wasn't right. His sudden excitement about the hike, his eagerness to get out into the woods, and then how quickly he'd abandoned us, it didn't add up. I checked my phone for the 100th time, praying for a signal, but there was none. Of course, we were too far into the mountains. Frustrated, I shoved it back in my pocket. I'd have to find help the old-fashioned way. I needed to get back to the trailhead. Maybe someone else would be there. As I started to walk back, I noticed something on the ground. A small pine cone. My heart leaped. Agnes loved collecting things like this. Could it be hers? I bent down and picked it up. There was no way to be sure, but it gave me hope. I called out her name again, louder this time, my voice cracking. "Agnes, please answer me." The minutes dragged on, and every second felt like an eternity. Then suddenly, I heard something, a rustling in the bushes up ahead. My heart pounded in my chest as I moved toward the sound. Was it her? Was she finally coming back? But when I reached the spot, it wasn't Agnes. It was a woman, standing there alone, her hands tucked into her jacket pockets. She looked to be in her mid-20s, with dark hair and a casual smile that sent a chill down my spine. "You're looking for a little girl, right?" she asked, her voice too calm for the situation. My breath caught in my throat. "Yes, have you seen her?" The woman nodded slowly. "I think I saw her heading toward the parking lot earlier. Maybe you should check there." The parking lot? That didn't make sense. Why would Agnes go back there? And why hadn't Zeke mentioned anything about her heading in that direction? Something was wrong. I could feel it in my gut. The woman's smile didn't reach her eyes, and the way she spoke, it was too casual, too rehearsed. My heart pounded in my chest, but I forced myself to remain calm. "Thank you," I said, turning to leave. I needed to get away from her fast, but as I walked back toward the trail, I could feel her eyes on me, watching my every move. Once I was out of sight, I broke into a run, heading back toward the parking lot. If Agnes had been there, surely Zeke would have found her. But when I reached the clearing, my stomach sank. Zeke wasn't there. No cars were left except ours, and the area was eerily quiet. Panic surged through me again. I called Zeke's phone, but it went straight to voicemail. He wasn't answering. He was gone. I was alone. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. I had to think. I needed help, but we were too far out for any reception. My only option was to go back into the woods and keep searching for Agnes on my own. But something about that woman, about Zeke's strange behavior, gnawed at me. Could Zeke have something to do with this? It was a wild thought, but I couldn't shake it. Why else would he suggest this hike out of the blue, only to abandon us? And that woman, who was she? I hadn't seen her before, but there was something familiar about her, something unsettling. I turned and headed back into the woods, my heart racing. Agnes had to be somewhere nearby. I just needed to keep looking, keep calling her name. As the sun dipped lower and the shadows grew longer, I felt the weight of the situation pressing down on me. Time was running out. It would be dark soon, and I had no idea where my daughter was. My chest tightened, and I could feel the beginnings of an asthma attack creeping up on me, but I forced myself to push through it. I couldn't afford to break down now. Then, just as I was about to lose hope, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a weak signal, but it was enough. I immediately called the police, my voice shaking as I explained the situation. They told me they were sending help and that they'd just received word from a passerby who had found a young girl matching Agnes's description. Relief washed over me. Agnes had been found. She was safe. I hurried to the meeting point where a police officer was waiting with my daughter. The moment I saw her, I broke into a run, scooping her into my arms. "Mom!" she cried, clinging to me tightly. I was so scared. "I know, baby," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "I'm so sorry." But as I held her, something she said stuck with me. "I wasn't lost, Mom. I was with one of Dad's friends." I pulled back and looked at her, confused. "What do you mean?" Agnes hesitated, then pointed to her toy camera. I took a picture. She said we were going to look at flowers, but then she left me alone. My heart sank as I looked at the photo. It was the same woman I had seen earlier, the one who had pointed me toward the parking lot. And in the picture, she was standing with Zeke, their bodies close, almost intimate. A cold dread settled in my stomach. This wasn't just a case of a missing child. There was something much darker going on, and Zeke, my own husband, was involved. My mind raced as I tried to piece everything together. Zeke had suggested the hike, led us into the woods, and then conveniently disappeared. And that woman? Who was she? How did she know Zeke? The relief I had felt moments earlier was quickly replaced by a sickening sense of betrayal. Zeke wasn't just neglectful. He had set this up. He had left me and Agnes in the woods so he could meet with this woman. But why? What was his endgame? I didn't have time to dwell on it. I needed to get Agnes to safety. I thanked the police and called a cab to take us to my brother's apartment. I didn't trust Zeke anymore. and I needed time to figure out what to do next. As we rode in the cab, Agnes fell asleep in my arms, her small body curled up against mine. I stroked her hair, my mind still reeling from everything that had happened. Zeke had betrayed me. He had put our daughter in danger for what? An affair? There had to be more to it than that. But whatever the reason, I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't stay with him anymore. When we arrived at my brother's apartment, I laid Agnes down on the couch and called Zeke. He answered on the third ring, his voice casual, as if nothing had happened. "Hey, where are you?" he asked. "Where am I?" I repeated, my voice shaking with anger. "I'm with Agnes. She's safe. Where the hell are you?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. I'm at home," he lied. "Don't bother," I snapped. "I know everything, Zeke. I saw the picture. I know about the woman, and I know you left us in the woods on purpose." There was silence for a long moment. Then Zeke's voice came through, low and cold. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know enough," I replied, "and I'm done. Agnes and I are staying with my brother. Don't bother coming after us." Before he could respond, I hung up the phone, my hands shaking. I knew this wasn't over. Zeke wasn't the type to let things go easily, but I wasn't going to let him hurt us any more than he already had. The next few days were a blur. I contacted a lawyer, started the process for a divorce, and set up surveillance cameras around my brother's apartment. I didn't trust Zeke to stay away. But for now, Agnes and I were safe, and that was all that mattered. One night, while Agnes was sleeping, I received an alert on my phone. The camera at our house had detected movement. I opened the app and saw Zeke standing in the driveway looking up at the windows. He didn't know I wasn't there. I watched as he paced back and forth, his expression tense and angry. Then, after what felt like hours, he got back into his car and drove away. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. He was still watching us, still trying to control us. But I wouldn't let him. Not anymore. A few days later, my lawyer called with good news. The divorce was moving forward, and we were close to finalizing everything. Zeke would have to pay child support, and I would get full custody of Agnes. It wasn't much, but it was a start. As I hung up the phone, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. This nightmare was almost over. I had Agnes, I had my family's support, and I was finally free from Zeke's control. But as I looked down at my sleeping daughter, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end. Zeke wasn't going to let go that easily, and I had to be ready